Those are some
Should we,
Southernisms.
Erica? Should we just get all the Southern sayings out, like really, just like right away? So
It's funny because I was thinking all of like from the space movie. Let's light this candle. That's what was coming to mind for me. I can't remember what the space movie is called.
I don't know.
You're talking about
it was probably one of the Apollo 13s, or
you're talking about the movie, right? Somebody's got to remember this one by Tom
Hanks.
No, author is Tom.
Hitchhiker's Guide.
No, this is space history, and it was made into a movie.
It was all the part of when they started off in flying supersonic, and then they turned it into the space race, and they covered the Apollo 8
right stuff.
crash and the right stuff. That's it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
Okay, and I got to remember that.
I'm really happy we got that one settled.
Yes.
I like Elliot's.
wrong Tom, Peter. It's Tom Wolfe. But yes.
Right. Elliot says alien.
Yeah. So. That tracks. I mean, any of it's all good. Yeah. We're a little out of sorts tonight, which I know that's kind of our vibe, but nice to have Erica here.
Yourself. I feel perfectly at home.
Great.
I shouldn't say that. I miss Brian.
Yes.
All right, let's light it up. Let's go.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. What is it like to become a pilot in midlife? The challenges are unique, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences. You definitely should not take any advice too seriously from an aviation podcast that uses terms like icing on the vegetables. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hello, and welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast, where we share the experiences and challenges of flying in midlife. Whether you're a seasoned pilot, training for a rating, or just thinking about getting started in aviation, we like to think of the podcast as your aviation companion and your weekly dose of aviation inspiration. Tonight, we're going to be doing some midlife learning with our friend Erica. For those of you who haven't figured it out already, my name is Ben, and I am an IFR rated pilot with a commercial certificate based in the Atlanta metro area. I would like to say that I'm flying a 182 called the Beast, but at the present moment, she's not flying. We're just going to leave that topic alone because it's a little bit of a sore subject right now. Joining us tonight, unfortunately, Brian was not able to make it. He's got some things that he's having to deal with, so we miss him, but we hope he can get things sorted out. Also joining us tonight, as always, our friend on the left coast, Portlandia. He flies a flight design CTLS we like to call the Egg. It's our friend Ted. Good evening, sir.
Hey there. It's nice to be here. Wish Brian was here, but we've got a good crowd going in the chat and here on the screen, so it's nice.
It is a huge chat that's grown in there, and I just saw our friend Ron Horton is at a campground at Sun and Fun, and I'm not jealous about that at all. I promise. Joining us tonight as well, our friend Mark, sometimes called One Dull Geek, also known as Wendell Geek. He is our secret superpower. He flies an unnamed Piper 235 Cherokee, and he resides in the Charlotte area, which OB calls the Metroplex. Good evening, Mr. Wendell Geek.
Hello, how are you guys? I'm doing pretty good. I wish Brian was here too.
Oh, well, thank you. And then certainly not least, but last on the lineup, but number one in your hearts, our friend Erica Gilbert from Aerosafe Aviation, a YouTuber, a pilot, a CFII, flies an 850 TBM 850. It's 850, right? And is kind of Wonder Woman, really, in my opinion. But yeah, thanks for joining us tonight from Central Kentucky.
Thank you for that really wonderful intro. Hopefully I can live up to it.
I've got no worries about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, could be a little bit of a different show tonight with Brian missing, but thought we'd go around the horn. I can tell you, I have not flown. I do look at pictures of my airplane just about every day, just to keep in mind what she looks like, and try not to get too sad. We still don't have a timeline on when the beast is going to be done, but we should hear back from the engine shop in the next day or two to know when it will be done. So,
is that the big impediment?
That is the big impediment. We have other things going on with the plane. We're getting a new muffler. The magnetos is time to be overhauled, but all that can be done while we're waiting on a cylinder overhaul. So I guess there is a silver lining, if you will, in that regard. So it's just the waiting is the hardest part, as they like to say.
I keep wanting to ask you, and I'm like, no, I'm just going to bite my tongue and wait until you have news to share on it, because I know how that must feel.
So I'll just be honest with you. That part really doesn't bother me, and feel free to ask me how things are going. What bothers me is when I have a business meeting in Adel, Georgia, which is a 5-hour drive, and there's an airport. They've got courtesy cars, and I have this meeting, and I need to get to it, and they're like, "Oh, do you need us to pick you up from the airport?" No, I'm driving. I'm just kind of like, you poor thing. But yeah, that does kind of hurt when I can do a hour and 15-minute flight versus a 4.5-hour drive or whatever it is. So that's when it hurts the most. So
yeah,
but that's all right. We have a lot of midlifers out there who have done debriefs who really know what patience means. So I can learn from them.
Yeah. Well, I was away for business this week, and the original plan was that we were going to go take a flight to the coast and stay somewhere for the night. My partner, who rarely gets in the plane, and because reasons, she won't be up and around much for a few months, so that was going to be the last minute thing, and the weather wasn't looking good enough. So I was like, that's fine. We're just gonna drive to a neat hotel and have a good time and drive, and I'm okay with that. I can handle it being in a car. I won't cry the entire way, just half the way. So we did that, and we came back Sunday around noon, and literally drive past my airport, and I'm like, it's almost blue skies. It's like there's just that like gauzy layer that you can still see the blue above it. The weather to be that good. I'm like, it's noon. I have the car until about 4. I can do it. I can go just make a quick flight. And so I did. Had a nice, just one of those where it's like, I just wanted to get up after being out of town and all that. So
nice.
And it's like the plane's going into annual in about 10 days. There isn't going to be enough hours on the oil anyway. So it's like, I kind of like burning a little bit of extra hours on the oil because,
I mean, you're wasting oil if you don't go ahead and try to, get the hours on it. I mean,
that's the only reason to do it is it's such a waste. Yeah.
I mean, because the egg takes what, like a quart and a half of oil and you're full.
Well, so I change it every 50 hours. I have a tendency to overfill it slightly. And so I know because I write down the oil level every time and it sits at 100% every time. It just doesn't eat oil. I mean, it's a water cooled engine. It's just like motorcycles, the water cooled versus air cooled, what they do with oil. So, but yeah, it was nice to get up. So
awesome.
Mark.
Well, one dog geek on, go ahead.
Yeah. I don't know if you've been flying in the last week, which I'd like to hear, but I also want to hear about a recent flight that you did.
Yeah. So I have, since upgrading to the 235, and 84 gallons, I have wanted to find the time to attempt from my mom's house in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, nonstop all the way home. And I had favorable winds and I made it in one trip nonstop. It was great. It was really fun. I had a little 20-knot tailwind and I landed with 2.5 hours of reserve. So
holy cow.
I was feeling good, and it was 693 nautical miles, longest I've gone in a single flight distance wise. So
700,
that was fun.
And what was the time?
in the air 4 hours and 50 minutes.
So 5 hours. Oh, that's good. And
Yeah.
do you know what it is without a tailwind? Like what you'd expect that kind of nominal trip to be?
Yeah, so I would expect it to be 5.5 hours, maybe 6 hours. It was 6 hours. It was 7 hours going there because I had a headwind. So
wow, yeah.
So
and what was it in Maggie? Your 140, Piper 140.
It was absolutely. I had to stop. There was no question. I was stopping in, and I found a place in Anderson, Indiana, that has cheap MoGas, and so I would stop there all the time. Both ways, I'd stop there.
And that was that like 4 and 4 to get there?
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Yeah.
I
And
can
by the
see
way,
the look
I
on
was
Eric's face.
instructed by the flyunleaded.com dude. It's not MoGas, it's unleaded. And because MoGas is not a thing that exists anymore. So I've just been trying to correct my verbiage on that, but it's just kind of funny. One of those things I thought you'd appreciate.
It's funny to see Erica's face, because I imagine the TBM 650 nautical miles is a 2.5 hour jump, maybe 3 hour jump.
That's just warming up, right?
Yeah.
Well, with a tailwind, it's not quite even that much. So
yeah, I was going to say, yeah. She's thinking, how cute.
My face is not about, one plane going faster than the other. My face is, no matter how fast I'm going, I do not want to be in an airplane for 4.5, 5 hours.
Well, I was solo, and there is a little red thing with a twist on cap.
Yeah.
That, I can confirm that it works. That's all I will say.
Yes.
Let's not go into any more details.
Now, Erica, have you flown in the last week?
Yes, as an instructor, I don't do a whole lot of flying that's purely for fun, right? It's mostly educational, but I've got a couple of clients right now. Who are working on instrument, and so we've been doing Part 61, lots of cross countries. And would you believe it? I reached out. I needed to do some approaches just for currency and proficiency and for fun. And I reached out to so many pilots that I know, and I wasn't able to get a safety pilot to go up with me. Can you believe that?
Now, you released a video not that long ago with a CFI candidate.
Yes.
And y'all shot at an approach.
Yes.
Were you able to log that?
Yes. And in fact, I told him, I said,
you were acting as PIC when you're training a CFI, but you're in the left seat and you're manipulating the controls. Do I have that correctly?
Right. But I was also under the foggles. So in that instance.
No, I knew that. Yeah.
But yes. So, and originally I edited this bit out, but he was going to be the one instructing me through the approach, but he hadn't done that before. So he wanted me to instruct through the approach while I flew it under the foggles. So it was, an interesting experience.
That was a cool video.
Instructing under the foggles is a new one. That's
instructing yourself under foggles
Yes. It's like instructionception.
Yeah.
It's very meta.
And what do you fly at the school?
So the airplane we were in that video was a DA-40 NG, which it's got a Mercedes-Benz, Austro engine, also liquid cooled and turbo diesel. So it's and FADEC, so it's an awesome airplane. I love it.
So that takes Jet A?
Yes.
You got Mark's interest. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a cool airplane, and because it's a Diamond, it burns like 5 or 6 gallons an hour, so it's incredibly fuel efficient. It carries that model carries 38 gallons, so the airplane can go way farther than I would ever want to.
Right. Yeah. And it has like crazy wide wings on it, right?
Yes. Yeah. It those 40-foot hangars are tricky.
Yeah. Yeah, I always notice that if you taxi past one, you're like, wow, it's like significantly wider than other planes. And but it's elegant too, which is great. So
it is. Yeah. It's, it's got its roots in glider and sailplanes. So that's why it has those huge lift producing surfaces.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
We'll get to the show topic in a minute, but in Brian's absence, I volunteered to do the belly scrubbing. So with that, we want everybody. We've got a pretty busy chat tonight. I think we got over 21 folks in here, and it's really great to see everybody. We wanted everybody to know how grateful we are for making this the best pilot community we know of, a positive space where we share everything from training experiences, shared personal minimums. We tackle ownership challenges, we review flight plans, and best of all, make new aviation friends. We've got a couple of different ways you can connect with us. Join us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or as Brian likes to say, a quarter an episode. Or you could do a one-time annual Patreon. You can pay on an annual basis. You can also do a one-time PayPal drop. We give you exclusive content to different things in Patreon, Killing Zone discussions, and a lot more on Discord. You can watch us on YouTube Mondays, 8 p.m. Eastern at youtube.com/at Midlife Pilot Podcast. We don't ask for this enough. We would love to hear your stories, share your feedback, whatever you have for us. You can send us an email at midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com. We do read every single message. You might hear yourself on the show. Also, we don't say this enough, but we'd really love it if you would leave us a review, 5-star preferably, and tell us what you think. So with that, Ted, do you want to let us know who our new Patreon members are?
Yeah, we've got some new people that rolled into Patreon this week, and we've seen a couple of them in Discord, which is always great to see new people showing up there. And they're at the Hershey bar level. So I'd like to thank Philip H., Josh M., Brad G., and Mark R. So thanks all for joining us. And some highlights from Discord. There were a bunch of kind of ask the community questions this week. There's talking about night flying and the risks of it. There's talk about overwater flying. I think Mark was in that conversation. And there's talk about what painting of your plane you're allowed to do or should do. I knew that Alex S. Had a conversation about some audio troubleshooting to an audio recorder. And the good news was I remembered that the audio recorder he uses is the one that our friend Badger Pilot uses. So it's a little bit easier when you can learn from someone who's already been doing it. As far as accomplishments, Mark Tipperator, passed 500 hours. So congrats on that. And Kale passed his IFR after like 3 delays, months of Pacific Northwest miserable weather. So
another model of patience in our
so
midlife
much.
community that I could learn from.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Kale. That's really cool, man. And Mark also for passing 500.
Yeah.
Mark, or One Dog Geek, let me say. We got a little bit of feedback. Do you want to cover that for us?
Yeah, Philip H. writes in and he says, your content speaks to me as a midlife student pilot fulfilling my dream to own, fly a plane after becoming an empty nester. The empty nest, man.
Yep.
Looking forward to it.
You were having that discussion with people today, actually.
I am curious what you did to get them to leave. That's my real question.
It took us a while to get one of them too, but the other two, I think, were ready to get the heck away from their father. It didn't take a lot of convincing. I can at least tell you that. They're both at school, so they've got their things.
Yeah.
Tonight we're going to be talking about a couple of different things since we have Erica with us, and she is a CFII, so she is coming from a place of knowledge, and you know that Ted and I'm not going to speak for Mark, but most of us barely know what we're doing most of the time until we get behind the yoke, and then we have a pretty good idea. But we wanted to talk a little bit about cross-country planning in preparation for the Big Texas Send, which is May 2nd through the 4th at Tango 82. We first got introduced to Erica through her YouTube channel and her weather briefs. And while I've been flying since 2017 as a student, it's 8 years now. I still learn a lot from your videos, especially the weather videos. Weather I understand it better today than I did 7 years ago, but I still understand that there's a lot that I don't know. But we want to talk about not only the weather briefing, but what we need to take into account when we're doing these really long cross countries. And then we're also want to talk a little bit more about learning at midlife specifically. Um, I don't want to say challenges because I think it doesn't matter what your age. You can have a hard time learning things or have an easy time learning things, whether you're 12 years old or you're 52 years old. Sometimes things just come easier than others. But do want to talk about um, some information out there, and then maybe we'll touch on a little bit on your IFR course that you have going. But to kick it off, you know, when you're, let's say we are now in the last week of April and we have the fly-in is a week away. And this question is really for Ted and Mark and Erica, but we'll start off with you, Erica. What are you looking at? Not only weather, but route, everything. A week
Yeah,
out.
well, in terms of weather, I start looking at it about a week ahead of time, and I'm not using aviation approved sources of weather at that point because none of the forecasts are going to be that accurate that far out. But just kind of, like the weather app on your phone or the weather channel to get an idea of what they're kind of forecasting is going to happen on that longer term. And then, of course, as for specifically what you're looking for, it's going to really depend on if you're VFR or IFR pilot, because we know IFR pilots have higher privileges, like the ability to fly in less than VFR weather minimum on a IFR flight plan. That being said, obviously there are conditions that no pilots should be flying in. For example, last week, I don't know, well, I know Ben wasn't flying. Ted, you're in a totally different part of the country. Did you fly middle of the week last week? We're kind of in a similar.
No, it was Cavu the whole way. It was blue skies, just perfectly blue skies. The only condition that was a little bit irritating was that over the Appalachian Mountains, as I descended, I got a little bit of mountain wave turbulence.
Yeah.
But
okay.
Very minor.
So I was flying on Wednesday of last week. Beautiful blue clear day. No air mets, no nothing in the area. There may have been some high level air met tangos for turbulence, but I was flying, did a cross country with a student down to London, Kentucky, and then back up to the Lexington area. And the turbulence was so bad, we made a PIREP for it. And then after we made the PIREP, all these other piston pilots at our altitude started making PIREPs. And, there's some ego involved here. So, when multiple pilots are reporting moderate turbulence and one guy says moderate to severe, it's definitely on the higher end, right? So it was a beautiful day and nothing indicated that there should have been that turbulence, but there was. So even though VFR, beautiful day, that is honestly a day I would have rather not been flying. By the end of it, my stomach was sick. I don't get motion sick. So again, long range, you want to start looking at Weather Channel. And then as you get into it, we're looking at those more specific advisory products like AirMets and SigMets and Outlooks. By the way, by the time we landed, there was actually now a SigMet over the area for low-level turbulence. There were enough PIREPs that they came in and put that in there.
That's kind of a cool accomplishment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I will say that on the way to Wisconsin, which was like a 3 days before, I was going in to meet the Badger pilot in Capitol Drive, his little airport. And so you get the ATIS at Waukesha, and the ATIS was almost an hour old, but it was like 60 degree, 13 gusting 20. Oh, warning, low level wind shear. I'm like, okay, we're gonna be primed on the go around button here. This is scaring the crap out of me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
That's
getting back to it though, so we've got an idea what the weather. We're just gonna pretend we're a VFR pilot, and we know that we're going to have some decent weather. We'll have some a few high ceilings, 15,000 feet, 10,000 feet, and what are some of the things you're going to consider when you're, let's say you're coming from Waukesha, since that's what Mark just mentioned. You've got to, let's just plan on 600 nautical mile trip. What are some of the things that you're going to, how are you going to go about with your planning?
Right. Well, the first thing that I would be sure of is that I feel current and proficient with cross country flying. If you haven't actually taken an airplane somewhere for a weekend that's, within the 1 to 200-mile range distance from your home airport, this is probably a little bit bigger of a trip than you want to commit to for the first big cross country. So maybe, for someone who is intending to come to Fredericksburg May 2nd through 4th, if you haven't done a big cross country before, I would encourage you to do a smaller one leading up to it. So currency and proficiency with cross country flying is something we don't talk about a lot, but what that's going to do, getting out and flying one of those still long but shorter cross countries, is it's going to make sure that you feel comfortable with all of the procedures, that you're aware of the airspaces in the area, right? So the Bravos and the Charlies. Deltas aren't a huge deal because you can fly over them most of the time or around them because they're very.
Let me ask you this real quick. Because Brian and I have had this debate. When you're planning, you're taking a Cessna 172 for however many distance. Let's stick with the 600 miles. You're going to have to stop once at least, depending on your tanks. You might have to stop twice. Are you targeting class deltas or uncontrolled fields, or what are you looking for those? Is it just based on fuel price, which I don't think there's anything wrong with, but I'm trying to get inside the head of Erica Gilbert. What would you be doing?
So I plan my stops around food, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I kind of look at airports that look decent, so plenty long enough runway and services available. And then I'm going to get on Yelp and see, is there a decent place to grab a bite to eat or a cup of coffee? So for me, it's the whole journey. It's not just about, the flying isn't a means to an end. It's like, hey, let's stop somewhere, grab a bite to eat.
And
so
do you take,
yeah.
So do you plan on, is it important for you when you're doing a stop like that to not make it a quick stop, to intentionally say, I want to stop and take a break to give myself some time to recover? Or is that just tangential?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, I don't, especially when I have passengers with me, 1.5 to 2 hours is the maximum leg that I want to do because I want to stop. I want to stretch my legs. I want to have, use the restroom, take care of biological needs. And I want my passengers to have spacing to do that comfortably as well and not feel like they have to say, oh my gosh, we need to land the airplane right now. So, I am flexible with time. It's not, I usually try and plan an hour to an hour and a half from landing to takeoff, which doesn't put time stressors. It doesn't add pressure. And, for the most part, you can land, order your fuel, grab a crew car, go get a bite to eat, and then come back in that amount of time.
Yeah, I know that Brian's bias is toward landing at deltas because if there's any problems, you're going to have services on the field, and
better
that's true
chance of there being
to,
services there,
right? Compared to the almost gravel strip that there's nothing within 10 miles, not even a fence, that kind of remote airport. So I can definitely see that bias.
Flip side. Oh, sorry.
I did have a couple of things. The one is my fuel range is a lot more, which is great. On the negative, I'm looking for unleaded gas, which is a lot fewer places. So oftentimes I may be making a rest stop for food, as Jim at Flying Midwest calls it, pilot fuel. I may be stopping for that and not for fuel. And so that's, you don't have to do everything at one stop either. You were saying.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You don't have to top off every time that you go. However, I do subscribe to the idea that the only time you have too much fuel is when you're on fire.
For sure.
So, yeah. I was going to say the flip side of stopping at a Delta is that sometimes at those little country airports, there are services you can't get elsewhere. Like if you need a hand prop, it can be hard to get that at a place where they have insurance.
Is that a true story? Have you?
Yeah. Mhm.
I like that. Yeah.
That's a long story. We can save it for another time.
Yeah.
And if you have 80-gallon capacity and you've got 20 gallons left, $2 a gallon can make a really big difference to the pocketbook as well. I mean, let's just be honest.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
So,
I try not to rule out any size of airport because, yeah, the small ones. Ben, where was it we went for the first Nashville fly-in? We took the crew car into town.
is that Blairsville?
Yeah, neither one of us could find the airport. Until we were on top of it.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, no, that
BZJ.
didn't you meet Brian there?
I did.
Yeah, I think that was Blairsville because I was watching
I took Ted there. That was the first
okay.
meetup.
Yeah.
Okay.
The very first meetup at Nashville.
Yeah. And that's just an example of one of those places where you pick it, even if all you're doing is picking it based on fuel cost or on approximately in the right spot. It's like, here's the adventure. I am comfortable enough that I can get gas here. And if I can't, it's not like I've left it to 3 gallons of gas, like
Exactly.
I can always go to the next place if needed. But it seems to be a popular enough place, and let's see the adventure and what their crazy crew car is. So yeah, that's what I like.
Out crew cars is it going to be my new YouTube? Edition.
Yeah.
So cool. Anything else, guys, that we want to ask Erica on as it relates to the cross country planning?
So for pilots that haven't done a ton of long cross country, at the time that you're leaving on the flight or in the flight, what are you looking at for weather? You can't look at METARs at 50 airports in the next 300 miles. So how do you kind of process through that on what you're looking for?
That is a really good question because obviously the longer you're flying, the more opportunity there is for the weather to change. And if you don't have weather reporting systems in your aircraft, whether that's an ADS-B and receiver or Sirius XM, then you're going to be highly limited in the resources, the information that's available to you in flight. So that's where, taking that bigger picture, looking at the service analysis charts, which is, Ben mentioned the weather analysis videos I do. That's always the first thing I look at. So the surface analysis gives us our pressure systems and our frontal systems and helps us really understand the type of weather we can expect to see. It's not just a question on your check ride or a question on the written. These things are real. And so looking at those systems and looking at the prog chart too. So those come in 3 or 4 hour intervals to see what's forecast to be the next pressure and frontal system arrangement. And is that going to go along my route or is it going to stay off my route? So that's going to be big picture what I look for. And then, of course, you can look at TAFs along the way. Those are written by, actual meteorologists sitting in the office looking at the forecast. And then further, the forecast discussions for the area, because sometimes TAFs don't tell the whole picture. There could be relatively low confidence in some adverse weather that's not high enough to create a line in the TAF, but they still think, hey, we believe there's going to be isolated thunderstorms in the area. We aren't sure when. So surface analysis, TAFs, and forecast discussions for those longer legs.
Yeah.
Definitely. I want to hit the chat real quick. Our friend Echo Charlie Elliott, speaking of the clapped out crew cars, he says, quote, "Let's see if we'll make it is a fun game to play when you're driving a 1986 Caprice Classic crew car with 360,000 miles on the odometer that stopped working 3 years ago." And Elliot, you left out the rusted out floorboard because I have had one of those.
Yeah.
And after spilling my Diet Coke into the floorboard and onto the asphalt, I mentioned it to him. And he's like, "Yeah, whatever." Even cares.
You mean the ground speed indicator? Yeah.
That was it. That's exactly right. So,
yeah. Well, thanks for covering that for us, Erica. It's nice to get some ideas what to think about.
Yeah, I mean, Brian and I, we've talked. We've had a couple of episodes on long cross country planning. We all have heard the phrase, "If you have time to spare, go by air." You got to give yourself a lot of wiggle room would be the advice that I would give people just from my past experiences. Another past experience, don't forget to turn the master off. Because batteries don't run forever. That's my words of wisdom tonight. But no, seriously. Thank you, Erica, for that.
Yeah.
The other aspect that we wanted to get into is also not only learning, not only flying cross countries, but learning as midlifers. For me personally, I am about to start the student mode again here in the near future. And it's a actual process that I go through to get my brain ready to start accepting new information. And maybe I'm just unique. Maybe I'm just slower than most people, but we kind of wanted to cover some stuff that you're doing, Erica, and the online ground schools and things like that. Ted, you had a couple of comments, I think, earlier about some information and about retention with online courses.
Yeah, Erica sent, and this will be in the doobly-doo in the show notes. But Erica sent a Embry-Riddle paper on MOOCs, massively online something courses. How does that go?
Massive open online courses.
Thank you. Yeah. So I know of that as like MIT courseware, and a lot of these where it's like you don't have enrollment in a school. These are effectively free programs, or we can think of them as being low-cost programs like, let's say Sporties or Gold Star, all the, what we use in aviation at least. But this paper is called Student Engagement in Aviation Massive Online Open Courses. And it's cool because they go through and they talk about, okay, well, in these courses, we studied a couple of them. The completion rate is less than 10%. You can kind of categorize people in these various categories about their motivation for taking the class. It isn't necessarily to finish the course or to get a certificate for it, which influences that 10%. But again, back to what we think of for this, the gold seal, Sporties, whatever, of I am enrolling in this and my purpose is to finish it because I need to finish the course. The completion still isn't great on it. And yeah, so there's some interesting things that I found in there. And actually, it was really interesting in that, I thought, again, because these are not enrollment classes that they're talking about, the median age in the two classes was in the midlife range. So the one was effectively 40, the other one was effectively 50. So these are not necessarily courses that are aimed at college students, like people going to Embry, So I thought that was interesting about that. But you sent it over, Erica. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, the whole study is interesting. I want to hit first on Ben's kind of question about learning as a midlifer, and we learn about this in the fundamentals of instruction, which, Ben, you're going to start studying as you become a flight instructor, right? Yes.
Yeah.
And Mark as well. So
you were relentless. You were relentless.
Hey, look, we've all been on a program to get Mark to become a CFI. So this is a massive effort. Yeah.
Yes. Well, the fundamentals of instruction, which come from the Aviation Instructor's Handbook, they go through a range of what some would call pop psychology, where they talk about the different ways people are motivated using Maslow's hierarchy. They also talk about defense mechanisms and all these different things that could influence the way we learn. And there's also a really big section on what they call adult learners or midlifers. And one of the things that they talk about, which is so true, is that midlife learners or adult learners, they show up prepared, right? And Paul Craig talked about this last week. When someone has had their career and now maybe kids are out of the house for some of us, or, we have a little bit of disposable income, maybe finally, and there's the opportunity to do something that we really want to do, that we've always wanted to do, always thought about. Every time an airplane flies over, you look up, right? And finally, you have the opportunity to do it. not only are you personally paying for it, but you also have always wanted to do it. So those two highly motivating pieces are already there.
Yeah.
And so I think midlifers they're just more committed.
I mean, without a doubt. I mean, I have wanted to fly since I was 5 years old, and the moment that I learned that it was in my grasp, I dropped everything to absorb all the information that I possibly could as and I've never learned that well. Listen, I've said this before in the podcast, and I'm not even joking. My motto in high school and college was 2-0 and go.
Yeah.
I was not a good student, and yeah, so it to your point, yes, if it's something you've wanted to do a long time, there's exponentially greater investment value to it.
Yes. I love the 2-0 and go. That just really cracks me up. It reminds me of C's get degrees.
Yeah.
Amen, sister. That's
Yeah.
just my own version of that.
Yeah, so the midlifers, they have that advantage, right? Where they maybe have a disadvantage is all of the physiological aspects that we get as we age with decreased eyesight and slower response times. And so maybe the flying piece could come a little bit slower, but the ground piece is a lot stronger. Now that
Well, you say the ground piece is stronger, but it's also like what I know is my memory isn't as good. Less of that stuff gets stuck into my brain. So you compensate in those ways as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that is true. The memory does change, the ability to actively recall new information, which is part of the reason why it's so important for us to continue learning, right? So that
Yeah.
we use that muscle, exercise that ability. But also, I think the demographic of someone who's a midlife pilot, they know what it takes to be successful in something.
Right.
You know, it's not like, well, you know, to be ordered to be able to be here, you've been successful to some level in your career. So
Right.
But the
you have,
counter to that, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. The counter to that is that we also, it's been a long time since since the thing that we've had to do is really hard,
right,
right?
right, yeah. It's kind of like what you were talking about on Discord, Mark, where you're like, the least you can do, the better. Now you're like trying to get less involved with the technical aspects of work.
Yeah, yeah. I think I was talking about my kids, but same difference.
Yeah.
It all works the same.
Yeah. I definitely feel that our motivation is so much different, and that impacts how you can rally the troops mentally to tackle something. Even if your memory isn't as good, you're much more motivated to do it, and you realize on things that are high demand that you need to put a lot more energy into it, and rather than just kind of the same level of energy into everything.
If you have the desire to do it, you will overcome those shortcomings at some point in time. So
Yeah.
Right.
I was thinking when you said that though, do you notice a difference when it comes to the higher levels of learning, like synthesis with midlife pilots?
Yeah, I think having life experience better allows you to synthesize and apply information, right? So, you know, for the really young students that I have who are maybe 18 or 19, first of all, I have to teach them how to study. They might not even know
Yes.
how to sit down and not even necessarily read a book, because I think there's better tools now than reading to learn material, but they don't know how to identify an area of weakness and then go full force at it and fill that hole. Um, but yeah, I've seen that the older a client is, the better they are to relate the new information to something that they know so that it sticks.
That's a good point. Yeah. Relating it like that.
Yeah. As for that study, I found it so interesting because there's now more than ever so much material available for us to study.
Yeah.
But a friend of mine, Frank Gallagher, is a DPE down in Florida. And he clearly says, he's very open about it. He says, we're in a flight training crisis. And his argument is that the quality of pilots that are being made are not very high. Like, they don't have higher level aeronautical decision making ability. Which is so interesting because the information is so accessible, right? I
Right.
mean, there's so
Right.
much free stuff on YouTube. There's so many sources of information, but it's just
Well,
not
that gets
sticking.
so as somebody who's recently been on the whole student to pilot train, that sort of gets into the things that I liked about online and things I didn't like. Like one of the things I still go back to the flight insight videos that I use to when for studying for instrument. There are still things I'll review them, and it is great that I still have access to them. I love that. But one of the things that's really frustrating about online is when an instructor goes from A to C, and somehow I missed B, and I can't figure out where I missed B, and I can rewatch it, and somewhere in the line, I'm like, I see you went from A to C. I don't get. There's something. It seems like there's something in the middle, and interactivity in person. That is an option that I really miss. I just really miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that used to be the way flight training was done, right? You would do your ground instruction with your instructor, and you would also go fly. And I think the internet is incredible because it has allowed this massive amount of access to information and resources. But it also has put a lot of pressure on that self-learning, which can be really difficult with the mass amount of information that we need to know. Um, Add to that the way the industry has been for the past 5 to 10 years, which is instructors are not career instructors, they're there to build time. They don't have a lot of incentive to spend that ground with you. So if they're able to say, "Hey, go do this course for a couple $100 and then come back and we'll fly," then that's what benefits them the most.
Yeah. I think, I mean, one way that I think that can work really well is you're taking it and you're going back to review with your instructor, and that helps clear up those things than just learning on your own with uh, no way to prove what you know other than practice tests, maybe. So yeah, um, yeah,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
those courses they do provide a lot, right? They're able to give you a lot of really technical information in a very short period of time. And so that's where the benefit of, not having the interaction comes in because they can just blah blah blah. And we need that, right? For things like written test prep and just absorbing all the material so you don't have to go read all the handbooks. They provide a very important niche, but I think that there is a piece that's missing.
yeah.
I want to hit the comments real quick. Our friend from the Flying Midwest podcast, Jim, writes in. He says, "So many sources, but sometimes that is overwhelming. I think that there are some instructors who are good in directing to the right sources, and others not so much. So garbage in, garbage out. And I tell you, it to add to that, it takes a little life experience to know when you're getting garbage being fed to you and knowing when to push it away. So it's a great point, Jim. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, Mark. I am in the midst of studying some Beechcraft Baron 55 manuals. Yeah. And
Do you have something to share with us, Ben?
not yet.
Ben's playing us down and he's bought a new one.
Damn beast left me hanging like this. No, I'm kidding.
With that only one engine.
How dare it? No, but I'm in that mode now, and at this one of the things that I am really not struggling with. I am going to be pursuing a new rating, and it's the school says the DPE is going to ask you this question, and you have to be able to teach this basically as if it was a CFI. And it's, the prop governor. How does a prop system, the constant speed prop work? And I know how it works. I understand the concepts of it, but being able to get across that hurdle to where I can explain it to somebody else is kind of a daunting task for me. And I know that I will go through it 100 times and I'll get to there. I'll get to that point. But to your point, Mark, when I could pick up the phone and call my CFI and say, "What am I missing in this explanation here?" is invaluable. Now, I agree with you. I watched actually Flight Insights videos on constant speed props, and I have started working out my little drawings because that's I'm a visual learner, and I'm going to draw how the constant speed prop works instead of trying to verbally describe it. But it's still it's really a struggle to meet that online and stay engaged to it. I mean, it's they can I think they can only do so much. But Erica, you're addressing some of these. So for those of you who don't know, with a little bit of the time we have left, you are offering an IFR online ground school. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I am. Thank you for bringing it up. First of all, I want to say, as you're preparing for the systems, there's a framework that you can use to help you study systems and then also to teach them. So anytime you look at a system, there's kind of four main pieces that you want to look at. If I may provide this input for you.
Please. Well, I'm going to call you and ask you again because I'm not writing any of
Yeah,
this,
no
and
problem.
I've got to hear it 6 times before I have it committed. So, but go ahead,
Well,
please, for everybody else.
conveniently, Ben, we've got a recording.
So when you're looking at systems, and this is the way anybody should study systems, it's the way they teach it when you go to a type rating, when you go to simulator for any aircraft that doesn't require type rating, but insurance requires simulator training. First thing you want to look at is the function of the system. So what does it do? Why does it exist to begin with? And then you want to look at the components of the system. What are the pieces that really allow it to work? And what do each of those pieces do? Then we want to look at the limitations of the system and also the failures. So what can we not do with the system? So in this example of a lubrication system, like how hot can the oil get? How much, what's the, max oil pressure? What are the quarts that we need? What is the type of oil we can even use? And then the failures. So what can go wrong with it and what does that look like? That helps us diagnose the situation in air. And then the last piece is the operation. So how do we operate it in the airplane?
Right.
What pieces do we need to use? So those four things you can use as kind of a framework to not only study systems, but to teach them. And then when you're asked by an examiner, tell me about your electrical system, you can say, well, the electrical system does that, and here's the components, and here's the limitations and failures, and this is what I do with it.
I like that. So do you just kind of naturally do that now? Because you've, I mean, not just as a CFI, but learning things, and yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So again, my friend Elliot, who not only does he fly a Gulfstream G5, but he is also their head, this company's head maintenance guy for Gulfstream, for the Gulfstream
Oh.
G5. And he's commented, Ben, you have a mechanic or two who will be happy to help you with this aspect. And just, I want you to know for the record that I feel kind of silly admitting that I'm struggling with how a prop works. And this guy knows a Gulfstream systems inside and out. And there's probably systems on there that you and I don't even know what they mean. So it's
He's like, let me think
but no,
back a
Elliot,
decade
thank
when
you
I
very
flew a
much.
prop.
I will be
Yeah.
calling you. I promise.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's great. So your class.
Right. I got distracted talking
Yes.
about systems. It's something I'm passionate about because I feel like not
Yeah.
enough people teach systems with that framework, and then we're just left to go, what the heck? So so we've talked a little bit about some of the problems with flight instruction and with these MOOCs, the massive online courses, open online courses. And they do fill a very specific niche that needs to be filled. But what we're missing is like what Mark talked about, which is that kind of personable interaction. And so seeing this need, I wanted to kind of fill that for people because not everybody has a great flight instructor who sits down and spends time with them on the ground when weather doesn't allow a flight lesson. They just
right.
cancel, right? And we need that in-person interaction to fill the gaps and practice answering questions, and to even just ask questions. So yeah, I've got a 5-week IFR course that starts in the middle of April, and it meets twice a week, and it's live. And so I've created a syllabus that walks us step by step and piece by piece from privileges and limitations all the way to weather. And we talk about everything you need to know to become a successful instrument pilot. And we do it through discussions and scenarios where you can learn the material and then also apply it. And so, in this way, it helps fill that gap between knowledge that you might maybe pick up from those online courses and the huge distance there is left to run to the check ride and then beyond the check ride.
Well, and there's a difference between test prep and learning to fly. And it's one of the spiels I've always had. It's like, congrats, you got your ticket. You've been able to forget the stuff from the written and the things you need to know for a check ride. And now you get to learn how to actually fly. And I'm sure that applies to instrument, maybe even much more so. But yeah, so what, starts April 15th or so?
Yeah, it starts April 15th, meets Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3 to 5. And they are recorded. I know life gets in the way. Not everybody can make the live sessions, but they are recorded. There's also bonus content like conversations with friends of mine who fly professionally and mechanics and pilot examiners. And then also, I'd love to offer for all the midlife pilots listening, if you are interested in the course, you go to gilbertaviation.com/IFR. And then in the little send me more info thing, just mention this podcast, and then you'll get $100 off of the course.
Nice. Thank you for
Nice.
that's awesome. So,
Question about that.
GilbertAviation.com.
Yeah, gilbertaviation.com/IFR.
Wonderful.
So are you looking for primarily people who are seeking their instrument rating? Because there's so much to learn about instrument that I don't know the things that I don't know. And I find myself interested in this class, even though I already have my instrument rating.
That's a good question. So the last iteration of this class that I did, I had everyone from a student pilot who hadn't yet earned his private pilot certificate, but was about to take his check ride, all the way up to actually an instrument instructor who flies for NetJets and was looking to get back into instruction and didn't.
Oh.
He was so far removed from Part 91, he didn't know what was company rules versus what was 91, and like what he needed to teach. So I've got runs the gamut of people. And, like we talked about earlier, passing the check ride is only the beginning. And so, I bring in real life scenarios and talk about arrivals and departures that I've actually flown and how to fly them, because we miss a lot of that in the training.
Yeah. I've got a hit, speaking of, being a pro and not remember how that translates, Elliot Cox. I don't think I can explain how a toaster works, but I can explain how the AC electrical system on a Gulfstream works. No shame in not understanding I can't say that word, intricacies of a system. Yeah, that's very much I have very specific knowledge and I can explain it. I appreciate that.
Here's my problem. I get to the point where I just want to go and fly charter and know my systems of my airplane and forget everything else. But then I talked to Erica, and now I want to go and learn more and more and more. So thanks for nothing.
Well, if I can, when you
class here pretty
also,
soon.
when you're talking about systems, start as simple as possible.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming up on time just about. Anything else, Erica, that you want to add to it, or guys, do you have any other questions for Erica?
Well, I've got to say that one of the things that I wrote down that I was thinking of was there is a paying for a course is it, which these massively online courses didn't have. But paying for a course is its own form of motivation, and there's a thing in careers where, for instance, a company will pay you to move to their city, but if you don't work for them for a year, you have to pay them back. And it turns out that a big issue of that. And I figured Mark would like this, but a big issue of that is loss aversion. We're much more sensitive to losing money than we are to having spent it or gained it in the first place.
Right.
But in this case, it's like
Interesting.
I've spent an amount of money on this course. How dumb would I be not to actually use the course and complete the course? So I think, let alone everything else, that's another great motivation for it.
Right.
So we
Yeah.
have a call. Go ahead, Mark.
So you're exploiting sunk cost fallacy there, right, Ted?
Yes, I am. Yes.
So in our chat, Stephen C, he says, after 3 years, I finally passed my PPL last month. Congratulations. We're very excited for you. Yay. Now that I'm on my own, I feel much less confident because I am now responsible for that final go, no go decision. Any advice for newly certificated pilot? So, and the chat has responded with, I thought, some really, really good feedback on that. But I wanted to hit my friend, Mr. Horton. He says at Stephen, grab some friends to share cost and go fly them. Be sure to land greater than 50 nautical miles away. Get that 50 hours PIC cross country on your own, not waiting to do it during instrument training. I thought that was a very, very good piece.
Yeah.
Also,
you can tell that's a DPE who is used to ensuring that people have their hours before
that's
they
right.
can get their instrument ticket, and it is fair. In fact, Paul's book talks about that a little bit and the difference between pilots who have gotten some hours before their instrument performing a little better because of that. But
And just so you know, Erica, Ron was my DP for commercial, and
Got it.
probably one of the greatest DPs of all time.
Yeah.
My humble opinion. But one of the other comments was from Jim at Flying Midwest Podcast. He says, I'd say be conservative at first in your personal minimums and then trust your gut. Then slowly start to inch ahead out of your comfort zone. You can always go up with a CFI anytime to expand your comfort zone or comfort. So,
yeah, one of the things that I had early on was, wait a minute, how do you expand your minimums? Do you need a CFI in the seat next to you? And really kind of reasoning through that. And this is not like a don't have a CFI, but this is part of what you do when you learn how to fly is learning what your limits are and how to expand that. And I'm not talking about going from a 5-knot crosswind to a 15-knot crosswind in a new plane, right? That
right.
learning, okay, well, here's what I'm comfortable with for ceilings to do pattern work or, distances and that type of thing. I want to hit Ron Horton's comment again. He said, also work on flying more precisely. Don't settle for plus or minus 200 feet because instrument is plus or minus 100. That I find that I have been doing more hand flying than just clunking on the autopilot and really enjoying working on that precision and it not being active in the front of my mind that I have to obsess over numbers and heading to do that. And I really that's something that I've really enjoyed, and I know I can see the difference in as my hours have increased to that becomes a lot easier to do. Yeah, those are all fair things, and honestly, that's why we've all kind of gravitated to this podcast. Was it's like, okay, we're baby adult pilots. Who do we ask? Probably not going to be the 21-year-old we see hanging around the airport who can help me with some of these questions.
That's
and
right.
The ways that you think about it yourself. So yeah.
Very
I'd also like
good.
to add for Stephen,
Please.
one of the best ways to add to build confidence is to fly solo. And in fact, when I have student pilots who seem to be having a little bit of difficulty with confidence or they're over relying on me just a little too much, if they've already soloed, if they've got the endorsement, I'll give them the endorsements to go do those landings within 25 nautical miles repeatedly and say, hey, on the weekends when I'm not flying with you, go do some solo time. And it's incredible the effect that has when you're the only one in the airplane making decisions on your confidence. Because then you make it back and you're like, wow, I made it back.
Outside of your pattern. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I actually went somewhere.
Yeah.
And
So
one thing to recap it, and you'll have to send me this link, Mark, but Mark, after getting his ticket, made a goal to do the private pilot maneuvers every 3 or 6 months.
It started out as every 3 months, but it is morphed into every 6 months now. But it's also includes corporate pilot maneuvers as well. So it's expanded a little bit.
You mean commercial?
I'm sorry, commercial, corporate, whatever.
That's all the same.
We blame Elliot for that one. So that's another thing you can do or put on your list is you'll forget doing a steep turn because you never are going to deal with it outside of that. I mean, there are times you do things like that, but you know what I mean. So those are a great way to kind of improve your skills, keep your skills, improve your confidence. Yeah. But enjoy flying. Yeah. Well, Ben.
All right. Well, anything else for the good of the order, ladies and gentlemen? I do have some wisdom for the week to close us out. Life is like a camera. Focus on what's important, capture the good times, develop from the negatives, and if things don't work out, you can take another shot. Signing off, episode 122 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. Goodbye, everybody.